Hi people of the internet and welcome to this new video. I'm Alessio Mendici, this is Natura, and today we're going to talk about this. More specifically about geographical discoveries, more specifically about Columbus and the discovery of Americas. And oh my god, I put here a huge, quote unquote, huge globe just for 2 frames, but that's gonna be fine. That's how YouTube works, I guess. Well, not really, but that's the same. Now, I want to go very straight to the point here. You don't understand the figure of Columbus, okay? You have no idea who Columbus really was, and I'm here to explain to you why. Well, maybe you know about it, but you are definitely in the minority, so shut the fuck up. If you want to, put a comment about it, I don't really care, but let's go straight to the point. Now, you probably read the title of this video, the thumbnail, and you're probably like, oh my god, what? And yeah, we're going to get to that, but in a nutshell, you don't understand Columbus because you think of Columbus as the expression of the tendencies of Europe as a whole, okay? Europe wanted to go to Asia. And they wanted to do it through any route that wasn't just crossing Asia with horses. So how were they going to go to Asia? A pretty reasonable answer was, let's go around Africa. And that's exactly what the Portuguese did, and that worked. And they built up a proto-colonial empire doing that, so that wasn't a bad idea. But someone, and that someone was Christopher Columbus himself, said something like this: since Earth is like a closed curved surface, and everyone knew that, there's this weird misconception according to which most people didn't really know Earth was a sphere, but that's false, okay? Basically 99.999% of people knew that Earth was a sphere, okay? So Columbus was a little bit like this. Since Earth is this curved surface, if I leave from, Iberia and then I going west, eventually I'm going to get to the east, to Asia, to Japan, to China. And there, that's great because, the main point of all of this is getting there because we want to do stuff there. Like Spain and Portugal want to trade with those guys, so that's amazing. And the first objection that comes to mind is, the Portuguese have already had enough time going around Africa because Africa is big, so we want to go around Earth, which is bigger than Africa. Isn't it a little bit crazy? And the answer to that is, yeah, it is. Mathematically, it didn't work. I mean, you can go around Earth with the technology at the time. Magellan did, but it didn't turn out too well, did it? He left with 250 sailors or something like that, and he died, and 17 sailors came back, something like that. So yeah, that really feels like crazy. And it was, I repeat, but Columbus did a math wrong, he forgot to convert some units, and so he thought Earth was way smaller than it was. And you might be, but didn't people catch this mistake? And yeah, the Portuguese did, and that's why the Portuguese didn't fund his voyage. But then it got to the Spaniards, and the Spaniards really wanted to compete with the Portuguese in the colonial game, so they funded his voyage anyway, even though they thought it would have been a failure, and that's the reason why they gave him just 3 boats, which isn't that a lot at all. So Columbus left, and since his math was absolutely wrong, you'd assume he would have died in the middle of the sea, and he would have for certainly did if only he hadn't stumbled into a completely new continent, which was America, opening the way to that bad thing we call colonialism. Yeah, so this is what you are usually told, and with all of this, you just assume that the motivation of Columbus, the reasons Columbus left, were one, the same that moved Spain and Portugal and all those guys, aka trading with rich people in Asia, and 2, the fact that Columbus asked for a lot of money in case his voyages worked, and so you might be thinking, and it would be fair, that the main reason Columbus wanted to do this was that if it worked, Spain would have gave him a lot of gold. Spoiler alert, it didn't really work because it would have taken a long time for Spain to actually build a colonial empire capable of getting in a lot of gold and silver. I mean, a lot of time. Longer than Columbus had left to live. And so Columbus would have died, forgotten, and yeah. So it wouldn't have worked well for him. Gold would have been found, but after Columbus was dead. But all of this leaves out the main reason, where Columbus really wanted to do that, which is religion. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, obviously religion played a role, but it wasn't the main reason. You're thinking that because it wasn't the main reason for Spain or Portugal or the great colonial empires in the future. And to be honest, in this age of the history of humanity, we tend to think as religion as always the propaganda reasons and never the actual reason, while it was the one of the actual reasons through most of our history, actually, for other reasons, but we ain't gonna dive deep into that right now. My point here is you are really underestimating how much religion was important for Columbus. Not for Spain as a whole, not for Portugal as a whole. I think that the decisions of great rulers can be traced back to like pragmatic motivations for a good 80-85%, and the main reason for that is complicated, but to summarize it is that if you ain't pragmatic as a ruler, you are going to be overthrown by someone who is, by the definition of pragmatic, and therefore all rulers have to be pragmatic, and there's a little bit of this Darwinian argument about it. But when we're talking about the motivations of Spain or Portugal here we're talking about Columbus. That's the historical figure we want to understand today. And to do this, I'm going to use two sources mainly, which are Todorov and the diaries of Columbus himself, which is great because they're both very good sources, to be fair. Now, Todorov in his The Conquest of America underlines that there's no way that wanting money, wanting gold, wanting silver was actually the main reason Columbus did all of this. And if you think about that, it doesn't take long to understand why. Simply enough, Columbus kept being very committed to all this shit even long after it had become clear that he was not gonna become rich. Like the fourth voyage of Columbus, okay? He cared deeply about the voyage, but it was super clear that he wasn't gonna become rich with all of this. So, but he was still super committed. And in general, when you analyze him as a person, it becomes more and more clear that gold couldn't be the real interest, because he talks about God a little bit, but like he's always like the main point of gold for him was more about being recognized as the person who had done something great than becoming actually rich. Like when he talks about gold, it's like, yeah, they gave me some stuff, and this means they think I'm great. They're so nice. That's always the thunder. And so what we should really analyze his diaries during the third voyage, in which he writes, basically, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, that he doesn't really care about gold because gold is a thing of the earth. And things of the earth do not really matter in the afterlife. The thing that actually matters is Christianity, is faith. And therefore, he has to do something for God if he wants to save his soul. And the main way to do that is making the faith spread. So, if you think about this, it sounds like Columbus is saying, I don't want to get to Asia to trade or get spices. I want to get to Asia to make them Christians. Okay, that's what Columbus seems to be saying, and that's what he's actually saying. Like, he says it way too often, and it motivates and explains his actions, like, for example, his actions in interacting with the natives, or the way he describes the natives in the diaries, really make us think that he actually believed that. So there's not a propaganda reason at all. We have to believe him when he says that gold was never the point. The main point was getting to Asia and make China Christian. He even says that, Columbus even underlines that Marco Polo had said that the great Khan of China, aka the Emperor of China, needed Christianity. Like, he's convinced, because he had read Marco Polo, and Marco Polo had a pretty inaccurate vision of China. Columbus is convinced that he has to get to China because China is hungry of Christianity. China wants to become Christian, is waiting to become Christian, and so he has to do that to do this great crusade. But it gets worse than that. If you read his diaries, it turns out that he's actually convinced that uh, all of this is a crusade. It's like we should get to Asia to reach Jerusalem, and yeah, you heard it right, Jerusalem from behind. So he actually says getting Christianity in Asia is should really be our main goal, because then we are going to open a second front with the unfaithful Ottomans, and by doing that we are going to secure Jerusalem, and we are going to do what the Crusaders couldn't. What? That's basically what Columbus wants to do. And what? Isn't it just a propaganda reason to justify it? No. No, it isn't, because you read the way he talks about that and his actions. For example, the fact that he cared about the fourth voyage and the way he did it, well, like, he never actively looked or tried to get gold. Like, he tried to make his voyages fundable, but that was never his main concern in the letters or in his actions in the New World. Most of the things he did were trying to build certain links and interactions with the natives that could be transformed into conversion processes in the future. Okay, that's basically what he does. In the Americas, it works much harder to convert the natives than to find gold or silver. And that's just crazy. And here we get to, like, the title of this video, Columbus didn't think Earth was a sphere. If you heard me carefully, I never said that Columbus thought that he could get to Asia because Earth was a sphere. He thought that it was possible because he didn't actually think that Earth was a closed curved surface, but he didn't think of it as a sphere. Most people did. As I said, almost everyone thought Earth was a sphere, but actually, and here I'm quoting literally, even though you might not believe me, he thought that Earth was pear-shaped. Really, he thought Earth was a very round pear. Like a pear that was almost like a sphere, but for, like, the upper part, where there was something, and here I'm quoting instead, that looked like a nipple. Okay, that's his point. And you might be like, what? That's so random. Yeah, I mean, the whole peer thing is just to get to the nipple, so just a weird way to phrase that. But the main point is that he wants to say Earth is not a sphere, Earth is a sphere with a thing somewhere. And that thing somewhere was like paradise. Okay, that was the mountain of the purgatory to reach God. Like, you know, Dante, like, there is that mountain, and on the top of the mountain there's heaven, paradise, and everything. Yeah, the home of the progenitors, all of that. Yeah, he was talking about that, about, you know, the upper portion of the pier. And the reason why that's so interesting is that he's describing Earth in terms of structure and shape based on Christian a Christian conception, which really makes you understand how much the main point of, since this is the way he, like, makes the argument for the voyage, since that's what he says to underline the possibility of the voyage. When you hear all of this, you understand that the main concern for him had to be the conversion of China, basically. And if you think about it even harder, you understand that it's not really just Columbus. That's not surprising at all. That must not be surprising, because even long after Columbus, the actions of the European colonizers were never really traceable exclusively to pragmatic economic interests. Like, those were always there, no exceptions, no questions asked. But, like, take Japan, okay? Take the civil war in Japan in the 16th century due to, like, the Portuguese importing into Japan weapons, like, and that had destabilized Japanese society, and therefore civil war. This yeah. We ain't gonna dive deep into that thing specifically today, but it is interesting to understand that the Dutch were the only European nation capable of maintaining trade with Japan because they helped to crush Catholic-like quote-unquote revolt in Nagasaki. Therefore, the Dutch kept trading relations with Japan, which was an economic huge buff, by helping the Japanese crush a Christian uprising in Nagasaki. And the reason why the Dutch did that was that that uprising was more Catholic than Protestant, and the Dutch were Protestant. So religion-wise, that made sense for them. But this means that, but why the Dutch? Like, if you assume that the main motivations everyone had in handling the colonial game was pragmatism, you couldn't answer the question, why did the Dutch do that? Because it is really like every other European nation, like France and Spain and Portugal, threw away their chance to trade with Japan for religious motives. And that is exactly what happened. That's absolutely true. Why did the Dutch do that? Because religion-wise, they could trade with Japan without trying to convert them. Because they were Protestant. But for a Catholic, this would be unacceptable, and therefore the Catholics didn't trade with Japan. And the reason for this is religion, and only religion. So, what should you take from this video? Just that you underestimate the power of religion to history, okay? It is very easy to say that history is not that dumb and religion doesn't have a prominent role because, pragmatism is always more important. And in a good 80% of cases, that's true. Okay, in a good 80% of cases, you can not look at religion and still find an explanation for what happened for the reasons we gave before, because rulers can't take religion into account too much, because pragmatism has to be more important to them, because that's basically the reason why they're the rulers. But still, this is still just in a good 80% of cases, and Colombus and that thing that happened in Japan are examples of situations where this did not hold. And I felt like this was super important to say, and which isn't really the main reason why I made this video. The main reason why I made this video was that I really wanted to make a video with the title Columbus Didn't Think It Was Fear, because I just wanted to make all of you think, what the fuck is this guy saying? And that was just fun in my opinion. But I am not sticking to the point. This was the video for today. This was the material. I hope you enjoyed. As I said, there is a lot of philosophy and historical stuff coming to this channel. This was our first video, not really philosophy themed, but more history themed. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe and turn those notifications on, because there's more coming. We are working on some very special projects. We are sure you'll like a lot. Put a like, write a comment if you want to give some advice. I'm gonna really appreciate that, as long as the comment is positive. If it isn't, fuck you. See you next time. This was the Natira. Bye.